Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Pullbuoy podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a look back at what was a slightly unusual World Championships over in Doha. Obviously, we don't normally get World Championships in an Olympic year. There were all sorts of people missing, but it did throw up some interesting racing and a few surprise results. Steve here, Bob is with me again, and Katie is back on board, and we're going to do our best in this episode just to pick up all of the big stories, particularly the British ones, from these championships. But starting with you, Bob, before the meet started, we posed the question, did we really care about these worlds? I think probably by halfway through we were caring.
Yeah, because we were getting some very good results and some surprise results and some uplifting results from a GB point of view. So yes, I think when we got to about day 2, day 3, we're thinking, yeah, maybe it was a worthwhile exercise after all. And we learned a bit more, maybe about our medal prospects, our medal chances when Paris comes around, and indeed how the British trials will look in April. So yeah, I think from a big sceptic as I was going into the meet, I think I came up with a little bit more resolution and a bit more positivity, shall we say.
Now, Katie, we don't know how you were feeling before the meet, but I don't know how your view of things changed. And no, it was a slightly unusual championship in terms of who was there and everything. So do you think that this competition really tells us anything for this year?
I think all it tells us really is where everyone is in February. And I think that's pretty encouraging because personally, it's not a time of year where, people typically swim really, really fast. And I think we've had some great British swims. So hopefully, there are a lot of people looking in better form than we have seen them perhaps for a couple of years, which is definitely an exciting thing. I don't think it tells us that much for Paris. I don't think you can use these results to predict how our Olympics is going to go, but I think it's an encouraging place to start.
I think it also changed our perception maybe of the male versus female debate that we've had quite a lot, where the men for GB have been so dominant for the last few years, and the 2 gold medals went to the women. So, is that pendulum starting to swing back again?
Yeah, well, I mean, the women have been improving definitely over the last couple of years. I don't know whether a sort of in-season meet like this, Katie, suits women better than men. Are they better able to deal with it, do you think, coming off big blocks of work?
I don't think I don't think so. I mean, I don't know enough about the science of it. I mean, being possibly a little bit unfairly brutally honest, I'd say that the female events where our medals came from were potentially quite weakened fields, whereas there were some quite strong fields, like the women's breaststroke was really strong, and some of the women's sort of sprint freestyle was really strong. But I don't think we were really seeing particularly strong winning times in the 200 fly and in the 400 IM. That's not to take anything away from our swimmers who did brilliantly, and you can only race who's there. But, if we were being really honest with ourselves, those are perhaps not times that we would expect to win World Championships, whereas some of the other winning times kind of were World Championship winning times that you might typically see.
But we don't have any comparable data to look back on, do we, for that? Because all World Championships prior to this one have always been in the summer.
Yeah, it's true.
And have also been the main meet for most people who would go to them. So, yes, as we've said a number of times, a very unusual World Championships. But let's get into it. Let's look at the 7 medals that Britain did win, because that's a pretty good haul from a team of 20, I would say, February Championships or not. You mentioned the 200 fly, Katie. Laura Stevens took a gold there. For me, the best thing about that medal was her progression, if you like, the way she managed the event. So she went faster heat to semi-final, 2:09, 2:07, 2:07, and that consistency, which has been a bit of a struggle for her in the past at certain meets, was there at this time, and she took the final by the scruff of the neck, led from the gun, and hung on for grim death at the end to touch first.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'm so pleased for her. I do think she always seems like a really nice person, a real workhorse, and as you say, it has been the consistency that she's just struggled with a little bit, and we've seen some. I suppose this is both a good thing and less good thing, is that we've typically seen some really fast in-season swims from her when perhaps we haven't expected it. And I'm hoping this isn't one of those, if you know what I mean. It really is a peaking at the right time and doing a great swim when it matters, and then being able to move it on even later in the year when it matters even more.
And a good example, Bob, of why the people wanted to go, really, because you get the chance to race in a big meet. There's obviously all the same stuff going on around the pool as you would get at a normal World Championships, and you get the chance to practice that heat semi-final kind of process, which you don't get if you go to Flanders or the Set of Collie or whatever. No, it's heats finals in the day. So a good experience, for that, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to set her up nicely for Paris later this year. She's going to have to go considerably quicker than 2:07.3, I think, to get a medal in the summer. But you're right about the progression as well. Good to see a big drop down from heat to semi, half a second more in the semi to final drop down. So yeah, I mean, it was great. I love the way she took that race on. Very gutsy. I mean, I think she was admitting afterwards that she thought her body was going to break down quite badly over the last 25. She kept it going, and it's great. And I think that's going to give her such a big fillip and such a big boost and encouragement for the summer that I think I will now be intrigued to see what she can do in London in April and carry it forward to July.
Well, I think she was very honest in her post-race interview. I think it was Laura, in that she noted that many of the people she'd raced in previous World Championship finals weren't there. So I don't think she's going to go off the deep end and get too overconfident off the back of it. But yes, a big boost for her, as I say, to go to a championship and to perform to the level that no doubt she wanted to. And she will be forevermore the 2024 World Champion. So well done, Laura. The other gold medal, you mentioned 400 IM as well, Katie, came from Freya Colbert. She won that on the last day, the last event that Britain competed in, with no medley relays this time. A little bit off her best, not much, but a bit off her best. But what was impressive was the way she swam the race. She'd obviously talked about a plan with her coach. She didn't panic when she was down in fourth at 300 metres. She paced herself brilliantly, trusted her finishing strength, and she got over the top of Anastasia Gorbenko in the last 10 metres when the grand piano came into play. So really great for her.
Yeah, I mean, she just seems to be, I know this isn't an improvement on her best time, but in terms of the way that she executes races and I guess how confident I feel watching her, she just seems to be getting better and better every time. I feel like she's such a reliable member of the team now, and you can almost forget how recently she's sort of become part of the British team, but it feels like she's been there forever. It feels like she's a really safe pair of hands, and now she's also a world champion, which is amazing. I think she must be taking so much confidence from the way that she's just standing up there with everyone else. She doesn't seem intimidated by it. Coming back at the end like that must give her so much confidence in the training that she's doing and what she can deliver when it comes down to a really big performance. So I think we could see her in quite a few events in Paris, and I think she could make a real dent in some of those.
And she had a consistent week all the way through, Steve, didn't she? Not just the 400 IM, but splits in the relay as well. So look great. I mean, it's quite. I think the 400 IM is quite interesting now, because now we've gone through that big Hungarian era when we had one really dominant force. There are a couple of people, high-profile people, who weren't in Doha, who we will see in the summer, no doubt. But they weren't there. Freya was there. She's going to have to go. She's going to have to go 4:31 to probably get a medal, isn't she? I would imagine.
At least.
Well, you say that, but I mean, there isn't the depth in that event now. I don't think. Well, I may be proved wrong in the summer. I don't think there is the depth in that event. So I'm not even sure it will be quicker than last time round.
I think we don't know if Kaylee McEwen's going to swim it. She hates it, doesn't she? She hates the 400 IM, but she is also the second best in the world at it. I would probably say second or third. If she swims it, it feels like the podium is locked up. If she doesn't, I think there's a bronze in there that is up for grabs. I think Summer McIntosh has got the gold. You give it to her now. I think Katie Grimes has probably got the silver.
She's definitely doing it.
She'll do the 400 IM. That's her most likely one to win, I think, by quite a long way. I can't see her not doing that. But she could probably produce a sort of world-beating 200 breaststroke or something any minute, and need to change her whole event lineup. But
well, yeah, that's you're talking about multi-eventer here, aren't you? In
yeah.
McIntosh, we don't know what her program is going to be. What's she going to do at Canadian Trials?
Yeah, but I don't see a world in which she doesn't swim the 400 IM and win. To be honest, the 400 IM at the Olympics. But I think it just gets a little bit more open if Kaylee McEwen decides not to do it. And kind of, she's got such a massive program, she's not going to win the gold in that. So why would she do it? That's kind of where I'm coming out on it. But what do I know? Anything that involves breaststroke, what do I know?
Well, on the subject of event programs, Bob and I, Katie, talked about Freya swimming the 200 back in Doha, and whether the results here might have had any bearing on her plans for later in the year. She's a very good 200 backstroker, as we know, but that event was a bit weird in that the top two were so far ahead of everybody else, and that bronze, is a bit up for grabs, like you were saying about the 400 IM, with Kaylee McEwen and Regan Smith, but both not in Doha. As the two favourites. But then Claire Curzon goes 2:05.7, and maybe that might impact on people's choice to do the 200 back. Well, Freya's choice to do the 200 back when she might instead focus on the 200 IM.
I think I found the 200 back an odd choice for Freya. She's obviously really good at it. She made a world final, but I don't see it as one of her better events. And I actually think, there was a chance of a medal in maybe something like 200 free in Doha. So I kind of found it an odd choice that she did the 200 back over something like the 200 free. I think, well, it really depends who gets that second or first and second US spot. There have been a few years where the second US swimmer has not been as strong. I think it was Ryan White last year who didn't make the podium. And I think if we were in that situation again, if we had a second American that wasn't that strong after their trials, there is a bronze up for grabs there. But if Claire Curzon carries on as good as she looks so far this year, I think those podium spots we could name them now: McEwen, Smith, Curzon. Give them the medals.
Well, there we go. We will look with interest
back in August.
Yeah.
And we'll look with interest to see what Freya does at trials in that vein. But you mentioned the 200 free, Katie, and Bob, you've already mentioned the relay, and she was very impressive in that women's 4x200, leading off in a 1:57.1, which was her second fastest split ever, obviously from a standing start. But we spoke about that team possibly auditioning for Paris. They were very, very impressive, I thought, in Doha. Surely if they make the times, they've got Freya Addison to add to that quartet that won silver in the Worlds. They've got to take them to Paris, surely, Bob.
Yeah, there's no question, is there? Because they're all going to be on the team anyway. Freya will have her events, Abby will have hers, Lucy Hope will have hers, and Maddie Harris will have hers as well. So and we're talking about the other Freya as well. So yeah, those five will be on the team unless something catastrophic happens in London in April. So they're all going to be there. Longer program this time around. Why not?
And great to see Abby Wood, Katie, back to something like the swimmer we know. I mean, we spoke about it Euro short course, but 1:56.6 split for her hair here, and it was her fastest ever 200 free split. She blew the race wide open at that point, to put Britain well in the lead at the halfway point. But just a great team performance as well.
Yeah, great, really great. And I feel like it's kind of all them, because it's not a race that I think British swimming have focused on particularly. It's something that, they've taken the chances that they've been given and proven themselves to be actually a really strong team. And I do think there is I think it's an outside chance, but I do think there's a possible bronze in there. I think, it depends how the race goes on the day, but we've got a really strong team all of a sudden. And as you say, brilliant to see Abby in such good form in the freestyle. Not quite such good form in the medley. Not bad, but not kind of at her best, which I think we'd have liked to have seen. But you can't have it all, and maybe she's saving the best in the medley till later in the year.
Well, we hope so. We hope so indeed on that score, but a very good 4x200 silver medal for the women there. Another silver medal came from Max Litchfield, Bob. We spoke about his comeback on our preview show. 2 years out, and he comes back, swams extremely well in the men's 4x2. Got himself a spot in the final squad for that team, but also comes back on the last day and knocks out a great 400 IM. I thought he was going to win it, I have to say, at one point with sort of 30 metres to go.
Too. Yeah.
But Lewis Clareburt just got past him. But it's great to see him get on the podium after so many fourth places at Worlds and Olympics.
And it's one of those occasions where I was actually quite glad I wasn't doing the commentary, because I think I might have shown a little bit of bias, to be honest. I'm sitting here watching on the screen and shouting at the TV, or the equivalent of the TV. 'Cause it's great to see him back. He's been through, I mean, his interview, his post-race interview, he didn't even touch the surface of what he's been through for the last couple of years. And a lot of people would have thought, that might well have been the end of Max's career. He's only going to get a chance maybe at one more Olympics, 2 fourth places, that kind of stuff. He's going to have the chance. I'm sure he's going to put himself in the shop window. He's going to give himself the opportunity to go to Paris this year, and nothing would please me more than for Max to break into that top 3. He can do it. He can do it. Again, we're talking about improvement, but again, the times you're doing in February are not going to be the times you're going to be doing in July. So I think he can, and I think there's some really good indicators from what he did in Doha that Max is back and perhaps even stronger than he was before. And all that training he's done with some high profile names. He's been with Chad Leclos. He's been in Italy as well. He's been training with some of the very best in the world. I think it's starting to rub off with him.
So he's back at Loughborough with Dave Hemming. So he had quite a week, didn't he?
Just
obviously Laura and Freya were gold medalists, and then Max with his silver.
Yeah, and Dave is a brilliant coach. He's a great coach, and obviously he puts everything into it. He does tweak things. He tries different things. He's quite an innovative and inventive coach, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I know he beats himself up a bit about that because he'll try things, and maybe they don't quite hit it at the right time, or they just need a bit of nuancing or a bit of tweaking. They got it right. They got it very well right this time round. So he'll be thinking about, okay, what do I do? Do I try and maintain what I did in February, or are there still some nuances, things that I can maybe adjust to go to July? I think his brood, his swimmers that were under his control in Doha, pretty much all look good, and I think he'll be very encouraged about what's going to happen in April.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, hopefully that group can keep that momentum going through to trials and then on to the Olympics, because they did have a very good week in Doha. Someone else who I thought actually had a good week, Katie, coming back again from a bit of a layoff that we've spoken about a lot, was Adam Peaty. He looked much more like his old self in the 100, particularly in his semi-final, where he's posted a 58.6. I think we said before that anything in the mid-58s would be really encouraging. I don't know how you saw it.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I think it's strange, isn't it? Because we're used to seeing him so dominant, and not seeing that takes a little bit of adjustment. That is not saying that he should be dominant at this stage. He's coming back from a pretty tough time. I was really encouraged by his semi-final. A bit disappointed that he sort of couldn't move it on in the final, because that's something we've been so used to seeing him do at these big meets. But great to see him back up there. The starts are not where we saw them improve to. They've gone back a bit, and I'm not sure that's something that is a reflection of the fact that we're not fully tapered. I would kind of hope this, if the starts had been improved, they'd stay as they were, which he'd made such strides with it, and it really does feel like it's taken quite a big step back. And I'm sure that's something that he and Mel will be working on in the lead up to trials and then to Paris. But that was maybe a little bit concerning. But nevertheless, overall positive, I think.
I know that they both used to get really irritated by talk about that, because we used to talk about it quite a bit. We talked about it on the podcast, didn't we, quite often? And it was almost like, well, is it really that bad? Are his starts really as poor as people are making out? I think that was a case. Obviously, we saw in the 50 in particular how poor his start was. And, it's the 100 now, certainly with the way that Adam's coming back into it, is a very, very tight race now. Very tight. You got the Chinese wasn't there. All the other big names pretty much were there. So he's going to have to, that start is going to have to be important. It's going to be a very important part of what he does. And I'm sure they're working on it. We'll continue to work on it in Loughborough, and we'll see where it looks and how it looks when we get to London in 6 weeks' time.
Yeah, and I think where he is physically, obviously with that long layoff, he doesn't have the dominance in his swimming speed that he once had. So the start does become a much more important part of it because it's it's leaving.
He doesn't blow the opposition
up,
away early, does he? Like he used to do. They're like at 20 metres. If you go, he's won the race already at 20 metres. That doesn't happen these days.
That's right, and I think he said after his 100 final that he'd worked harder than he'd wanted to down the first 50, and that was possibly a consequence of just coming up a bit further back than he would have wanted to. So yeah, if he can polish that up, he'll put himself back in the frame, I think. So plenty for them to work on.
When the races are so close, like the distance between gold and fourth in the 100, it's a small. It's a very small amount of time, and when you see him coming up behind, sort of right from the start, it really hammers that home how important it is. And obviously, we don't need to tell Adam Peaty this; he'll know, and he'll be working on it. But I guess when it's something that strikes us just watching, it feels like a big-ish problem. But they've solved it before, and they can solve it again.
Well, they have, and also, as I say, used to irritate both of them when he was so far dominant in that event and winning it by a second or whatever. The people always go, "Oh, but your starts aren't very good, are they?" And that's going to come back again to be another subject that will be talked about going into trials and then off the back of trials and into Paris. And I'm sure he'd rather people talk about his swimming for 95 metres rather than the first 5.
Well, they've got plenty of time to sort it out. So they've done it before. I'm sure they can do it again, as I said. So hopefully they will do that between the two of them. That was the first of 2 bronze medals that Adam picked up in these championships, because he also helped the mixed medley relay team to bronze in that event. So that's been one of GB's strong points for a few years. It was a bit of an experimental team this time. Duncan Scott swam the fly in the heats, and then Matt Richards swam the fly in the final. Lots of people coming off doubles just because of the way the programme fell. But a very impressive anchor from Anna Hopkin, Katie, 52.5, which is the fastest she's been in a relay since Tokyo. And a great bronze, because I know we've worried about that team a little bit in Adam's absence, but hopefully a bit of encouragement there.
I thought Anna looked absolutely brilliant this week, and it sort of feels like the results aren't a fair reflection on how good she was. Her individual 100 was great. She was brilliant on the relays. Her 100 was actually quite a lot better than her 50, I think, this week. But that might just be a reflection on the fact that there were some completely insane 50 freestyles on the women's side and on the men's, actually. But I just think she was great. I don't think I've seen her look this good since Tokyo, and I feel kind of renewed excitement about how well she's going to do this year. She's in 100 free is a horrible event to try and get a medal in, because there's just those insane Australians, and Sarah Sjostrom, if she chooses to do it, which she probably won't, but it's a really strong field, but she's right up there.
I doubt we'll ever see Matt Richards do the 100 fly either in the relay.
Well,
again,
you say that. I've heard him say that
we've got 2 alternatives though, who are specialist fly swimmers. So
maybe not.
We can do that.
Maybe not this year then. Yeah, I'll grant you that. But he has said that he wants to explore the 100 fly. 52.8 for him was not bad at all, considering his best time is somewhere in the 54s. So
no. I would have thought James Guy will be telling him to back off.
Well, and a certain Jacob might be saying that too.
Yeah. I think we can safely say we won't be seeing him do it again this year. Yeah. No. Okay. I will take that.
It depends. We obviously haven't got the entries yet for London, but it'd be interesting to see whether he might add that to his programme potentially.
I think he'll be busy enough with the 50, 100 and 200 free, to be honest. But never say never. All right, let's move on. Last medal was another bronze from Mr. Reliable, Ben Proud, who took 50 free bronze, as I say, on the penultimate day of competition over there. Since Tokyo, in the championships in 53, his record is gold, 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 silver, bronze, gold, bronze. So he's on a pretty good run at the moment, Katie.
It's a very good run. Let's make some of those bronzes golds, please, because I think he deserves it. No, he's doing brilliantly, and it does show that there are real chances there, because sort of everyone's talking about Cam McAvoy and how, he seems pretty untouchable at the moment, and there's all this chat about Dressel and coming back and what that's going to look like. We saw the final where McAvoy didn't win after a totally dominant heat, and in fact, it was someone we weren't really expecting to beat him, came out of nowhere and beat him. Sadly, not Ben. But I think it's one of those events where you can just never, the medals are not sealed up, and you can never say that they are. And he's such a good racer. I just think he needs that Olympic gold to complete his collection, and I so want it to happen in Paris.
That was such an interesting event from the McAvoy point of view, because after his heat swim, they were going, the world record's going there, isn't it? Because he was so quick in the heat. So we go, only a matter of time. Not a question whether he'll win it, it's whether he can break the world record and how much he wins it by. And Bukov came through and gave him a bloody nose. You could tell from our Australian commentary team in Doha, they were a little bit perplexed by that.
Well, it wasn't the winner that we were expecting, certainly, but he took his opportunity in a race where there weren't many people missing from it. So fair play to him, because he performed in the race that mattered. But I find this one really interesting because, as you say, McAvoy was super quick in the heat and looked absolutely magnificent, and then was a bit tense in the semi-final, probably because he thought, I'm going to, even subconsciously thought, I'm going to break the world record. And that pressure maybe knocked him off his game a bit. In the final, I think it's really interesting bit of psychology. I do wonder if Ben and his coach James Gibson had sat down and actually talked about this, because I know that James has done it before when he actually tries to knock other swimmers off their game by the way they swim the race. I think Ben did it to Jordan Crooks at the World Short Course 2022, would it be, where Crooks had been looking magnificent, so Ben went out and did the fastest first 25 he'd done in the whole competition to try and just get in his opponent's head and think, I shouldn't be behind here, what's going on? And I wondered if there was something about that with the way Ben started. He's obviously got a great start, but he came up ahead of McAvoy and he put some distance into him. And at that point, his opponent's thinking, I should be in front. He's chasing the race and maybe slipping water. Obviously, I think they possibly looked at each other a bit too much, and neither of them saw the Ukrainian steam through in the lane next to them and actually win. But I just find it really interesting that psychology plays such a big part in that race for 20 seconds or something. You would think it would be.
Do they have long enough to think about it?
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't think they would you? But I'm pretty sure that's a very James Gibson thing. I think that they would have talked about doing that. So
yeah,
there we are.
I mean, I think Ben is a real master at doing his own race. Like he's pretty consistent. I think I think it's very rare that he seems put off by anyone else or put off by the occasion. But I guess you can't control what anyone else is doing around you. I think McAvoy was put off by the occasion. I think going that fast in the heat, then as you say, the pressure of possibly breaking the world record in the final, and then the pressure of winning the semi-final, and then the pressure of winning the gold in the final seemed to get to him. And maybe that's encouraging and that will give Ben a bit more confidence when it comes to the Olympics. I don't think, to be honest, Ben needs more confidence. I think he looks great. And yeah, I think what we can just fall back on every time is that it doesn't really matter what we're doing in February. It's what we're doing in July that's going to be the important thing this year.
But I think it does also point out that we're going to have a great race in that event. Time or not, it's going to be a great event in Paris. So don't miss that one.
Is the world record going to go in Paris? That's the question.
I think I have a feeling.
It's Chelo's record, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I have a feeling if it goes, it might go earlier than that. Maybe at Australian trials or something.
I think,
and maybe not in the actual Olympics.
I'm not. I mean, possibly influenced by personal bias, but Dressel's just had a baby. Not himself. That would be a marvel.
That would be a story, wouldn't
but
it?
This week, I think his son's arrived. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of things going on, but I don't think his sleep will be. Well, I don't think he'll be having the sort of preparation that he will have had for any other major meet. It'll be different, and maybe that'll give him, something more. But also, I would have thought not ideal prep for an Olympics, especially when you've had a tricky few years. I don't know if we'll see the same Dressel that we've seen kind of in the last sort of 2 to 4 years ago. So it's just going to be all about who wants it most on the day, who's least put off by it all. And I think that Ben is a very good person to rise to that occasion and not be intimidated by it.
Well, we know what the plan is then. When he gets on the starting blocks, about 5 seconds before he starts, you get a baby noise coming out. That'll put him off straight away. I think.
All right then, you can volunteer to do that from the commentary tribune
box. Yeah. I'm just taking sound effects thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, we all hope that Ben can add a G to the end of that big run of medals, but we'll look forward to that later in the year. Few other British points to pick up. Obviously, the main point of going was to secure that final relay spot for the men's 4x100 free, and they did it. I have to say, I was quite worried at 200 metres in the heats that they weren't even going to make the final. But a great leg from Duncan Scott, and then Matt Richards with a 47.7 dug them out of a little bit of a hole. I mean, I think they probably would have made it anyway, as it turned out. But
you got the two strongest at the back end as well. So,
and then actually, really impressive from Duncan in the final when he was trying to chase down a bronze medal. 47.3 is rapid, Katie.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw some really good versions of Duncan Scott this week, which is great. Like I know not sort of totally peak, but he's another one who I think has had a tough sort of 18 months. And he did some good stuff last year, but hasn't quite been himself. And he was really great this week. So I felt like that's a good February. And I just can't wait to watch the 200 free at trials. How good's that going to be?
Well,
Absolute bum fight.
It is. I mean, Duncan was 145.8, which is pretty decent in February with no taper off the back of an altitude camp, etc., etc. So yeah, he certainly isn't giving up on getting an individual swim for the Olympics in that one, and why should he? Frankly, but yeah, they got that relay spot, which is the most important thing, and they got Jacob Whittle back on the horse, as it were, in terms of giving him a chance to do a takeover. Very safe one, Bob, at 0.4, I think it was. But,
yes, he wasn't going to make that mistake again, was he?
But yeah.
We had to be a bit quicker. Just a bit quicker, Jacob. Just a little bit. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, but important that he that he did do that. So good. I
wasn't sure that he was going to have the chance, actually, because he led off in the heats, didn't he? And I thought it was an important chance for him to do a takeover again, because he will have hated the last few months and feeling responsible, rightly or wrongly, for them having to be in Doha and qualify there. You need to. We know that he can't lead that relay off come Paris, because we've got people who are less reliable on the takeovers, I think, who typically haven't done particularly fast takeovers, who we probably want to lead off instead. So it's, we just needed to get that over with, didn't we, as a team, and let him have that experience, do it fine, and kind of move on. We're in a new year, and hopefully that medal's there for them come Paris.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see what our quartet is for the Olympics as well, because we've got some options.
Yeah, can't believe it.
Yeah, crazy to think, given Britain's history in the freestyle. But we'll wait and see what happens there in London to see who gets onto that squad. One other swimmer I wanted to just pick up on was Lauren Cox, who some a lifetime best. I think, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was the only lifetime best that the GB team set in the week, which is not a criticism, because there was obviously February and no tapers, etc. But really great for her to go 59.6 in the 100 back, and then she just missed the 50 back podium. So, it's probably a bit of a scrap for the Olympic spots in that event at the moment, with Kathleen coming back and obviously Medi Harris in there as well. But she's going in the right direction, Katie.
Yeah, I think she looked really good. I don't know what to make of Kathleen. Obviously, she's come back from some pretty awful injuries, but I don't know how fast she's coming back. And again, February, what do we know? But she didn't. We haven't seen her break a minute, have we yet? For a few years? Am I wrong?
I'm not sure.
I don't think we've seen her break a minute in the last few years. Sort of not surprising, obviously, during that time of injury, but it does feel like a real battle. And I don't know. We haven't really typically taken two backstrokers to major events, I don't think, for the last few years. And I think we'll have three that are certainly in contention, at least, because you never know what's going to happen at trials. So at the moment, it looks like Mehdi and Lauren are up there. Quite surprising, Mehdi didn't do any individual backstroke, actually. She was out there anyway. But I sort of want everyone to make it at this stage. But there's only going to be two spots, aren't there?
And watch out for Phoebe Cooper of City of Sheffield, by the way. I've got to put her in as a bit of a dark horse there to come through, potentially.
Right. Okay. Well, write that down and we'll talk about her some more when it comes to previewing trial spot. But yeah, there's going to be a big bun fight, as you say, to get into that one. I'm just going to jump back to takeovers very quickly, because you talked about Jacob perhaps needing a bit more. He needs to take a lesson from Max Litchfield, who was 0.01 in the men's 4x200 freestyle. So there we go. All right. There were a few other things that caught our eye at the meet, and top of that list was our friends from across the Irish Sea, particularly Dan Whiffen, Bob. Gold in the 800. He wins the 1500 by 10 seconds. He looked like he might have been having a go at the world record. Obviously, no Bobby Finkel in the final. He wasn't there, and Ahmed Hafnoui and Gregorio Palcineri both missed the final. But it was still a high quality field, and he made them look positively pedestrian.
I didn't think I'd ever hear him being equated with Katie Ledecky, though. That was the funniest thing. They said he's done a Ledecky, which he did. I mean, he was so far clear of that field. And the problem was, it was a great race going on for second and third. In fact, there were 5 people going for second and third. And it was a procession, absolute procession. But once he got in front, 200 metres onwards, it was pretty much the Dan Whiffen show, or time for Dan, as he was pointing at the invisible wristwatch. But do you know what? It was fantastic. And you're thinking, in February, you probably don't want to break a world record in February. You want to do it, in the summer. But he was there or thereabouts all the way through. And what a fantastic, what a brilliant 12 months he's had, world short course record holder, and then to do that in February, double the 18 and 15, which will hopefully take away the memory of Michelle Smith being the last Irish medalist when we get to the summer.
Well, he's in a really good place to do that, and maybe the world record will be on. But great work that he's doing in Loughborough with Andy Manley, certainly to put him in this position. So plenty more to come from him, I think, this year. We did see a world record go, which we weren't perhaps sure we would, but it was leading off a relay. Pan Zhanli of China went 46.8 in the 100 freestyle. Katie, not one. Well, he's been on the up, but perhaps not one we were expecting quite this soon.
Yeah, I think he had a really strong Asian Games, but I don't think we in Europe tend to. It doesn't get covered. We don't pay that much attention to it. You kind of see some times, but until you've actually seen it in the flesh, it's quite hard to kind of place where that sits everyone in the world. Really, really impressive. He also had some spectacularly unimpressive swims. I think he went 151 in the 200 free, and then followed up with a 143 in the relay. So goodness knows what was going on there. But he's another one throwing his hat in the ring. I'll be interested to see how Popovic responds to that, and kind of which Popovic we're getting this year.
Yes, very good question.
And it's a quite different approach to the race as well, because as Pan has switched it round from being a bit of a back-end swimmer to being very much a front-end swimmer, and Popovic, as we know, is very much a back-end swimmer, although he's very fast as well. So a clash of styles that could make it for quite an interesting race next time they meet up, but we'll watch out for that. One more for you, Katie, as our resident breaststroke expert. Siobhan Hawley, bronze in the 100 metres breaststroke in a 66 flat or something, and then immediately afterwards she swims a ridiculous 200 free or whatever in the same session. Anyway, what do you make of that?
Insane. I think it was 65. Like up until this meet, she'd sort of dabbled in breaststroke and she'd been good, like very good, probably better than anyone we've got on 100 breaststroke, but kind of not podium good. And that is actually a podium good time for almost any major meet. That was one of the events that was so strong.
65.9, you're quite right, yeah.
It's absolutely insane. And I remember her, she used to do a brilliant 200 IM when she was swimming in in the US doing her college swimming, and I just wonder if we're ever going to see that long course, because she's obviously got a really, really good world class breaststroke, and I think there's a couple of other strokes lurking in there that are pretty good as well. So I would be interested to see that at some point, but I just think she somehow flies under the radar, and she's really, really underrated as a swimmer, but she's so good.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing her swim all year. Really, I like watching her swim. I think she's great, as you say, and doesn't get the credit she deserves, probably because she swims in the 100 and 200 free primarily, and we know what those events are like with the Australians at the moment. So yeah, underrated, as you say. All right. Any final thoughts on World Championships? I mean, are we settled on? Doesn't really tell us much, but we're happy with the British performance and what it tells us, Bob.
Yeah, but don't have it again in February, please.
Well, we should be back to more conventional World Championships from next year, Katie, and I think we'll all be happy for that.
Yeah, it's been nice that there's been lots of swimming to watch, but I can't keep up with one every 6 months. So let's put that aside now and get back to our one every 2 years, please.
Yes, I think so. Right, Singapore
it'll be
next
18
year.
months now. Yeah.
Singapore next year, and then I don't know where 2027 is, actually.
It's in Budapest.
Oh, yes, there we are, of course.
And
then
they do need to host something every few years, don't they?
2029 is going to be Beijing.
So there we are. That's the next few years mapped out with obviously LA. No, yes, LA Olympics in between all that as well. Right. I think that's the World Championships done with. There was one other notable swim over the last couple of weeks that we ought to just mention. Amelie Bloxage, Bob, 16:10:04 long course 1500 free at the Lancashire County Championships.
Yeah.
Moves her to third fastest all-time GB behind Jazz Carlin and Kerry-Anne Payne. We're going to have to keep a lid on and try not to get too excited, really, aren't we?
I want to get
she's
excited.
On the way up.
I want to get excited because, let's face it, we didn't have anybody in the 8 and 15. In fact, do we have anybody in the 4 last time? We didn't have anybody in the 4, 8 and 15 last time, did we, for the Olympics? So we need some long-distance swimmers. We know that obviously open water, we've got a couple of decent swimmers now, female. But, we need somebody pushing that envelope and pushing the button very strongly. And she's doing that. She'll be 15 come Olympic time, 14 at the moment. She is a prestigious talent, really is. She's going to, if she carries on at the rate she is at the moment, she's going to be quite special, and I think she'll do something special at trials.
Well, she needs 16:01 at trials to meet the automatic nomination time, Katie. I know you are reluctant, unlike Bob, perhaps, to ratchet up the pressure, but she's so young that 9 seconds in a 1500 could easily happen.
Yeah, I mean, she's dropping time here, there, and everywhere. I am nervous about accidentally putting pressure on someone that's so young. I'm sure she can totally take it, but I just know that a lot of swimmers sort of end up under a microscope, which is somewhere that they might not like to be in Olympic year, when you've just been used to be able to get on with things. And
why couldn't she be our Katie Ledecky? Why couldn't she be our Katie Ledecky?
Oh, well, because she's got the wrong name, Bob.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's great. There's no doubt. She's incredibly talented. She's an incredibly good swimmer. She's improving all the time. But I'm just nervous because she's 14 and I don't want to put pressure on her. But obviously, it is very exciting. Right.
Well, we will put that back in the envelope marked no pressure until trials and see what happens there. But an incredible performance from her at those county championships in the Manchester Aquatic Centre. So we'll see, excited to see what she can do. All right, I think that's a good time to draw things to a close. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, Katie. Great hearing your
Steve.
Thoughts.
Thank you.
We'll probably be back with you next time to preview those Olympic trials. We've mentioned them lots of times during this episode, but they are coming up in 6 weeks or so, and we will hence take a look forward to events in the London Aquatic Centre on our next episode. Until then, you can find me on social media at pullboy on X or at pullboy UK on Instagram, Facebook. Go to pullboy.co.uk/contact if you want to send an email. But otherwise, we'll be back with you before Olympic trials. So thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Pullboy Podcast. For more episodes, visit www.pullboy.co.uk/podcast.